What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hops Geek News, a podcast that talks about comic books, movies, TV shows, and of course, we typically feature a beer of the week. Today, we got a really great episode because we are going to be sitting down with Travis and Kenny of Omnibus, a great comic book app that we're going to dive into here very shortly. But first things first, I am Matt. Alongside me, as always, is Lauren, the brains of the operation. And if you've never heard of us and you've stumbled here, hey, thanks for joining us. By all means, go to Hops Geek News on any podcasting platform, any social media platform. Give us a follow, hang out with us. And if you feel so inclined, patreon.com/HopsGeekNews is our way to support the show. We get exclusive content. We send you a nice little welcome box that has some comic books that we recommend in it. You get episodes early, all that really, really fun stuff. Like I said, today we got a great episode for you. And in honor of this, I'm going to be drinking from one of the best breweries in America, Treehouse Brewing I got this one from Tewksbury, Mass, because my parents literally live 10 minutes away from the brewery. So it is Triple J Juice Machine. As we all know, I've had it before, but is a double IPA, 8.6%. Once upon a time, a warp in a galaxy very, 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 very far away, there lived a ruthless race of beings known as the Juice Machine. Utilizing the highly original blend of hops and juice machine at maximum volume, we built a singularly plush base beer to absorb and perpetuate this onslaught of hops. Man, I promise I'm not always this illiterate. Its taste of gooey mango, mandarin orange, high chews, and sticky tropical fruit enveloped by a familiar and proprietary treehouse yeast character. If you're on YouTube, man, look at that stellar artwork as always. Delicious as always. Lauren, what's in the can, the glass? What's up?
It's a Treehouse from Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Would you look at that? And you didn't even go and tell my parents hello. How dare you?
So yes, I got back. At this point, it'll be a little bit from my 40th beercation. And so I picked up this very green double IPA. It's so freaking good. It's so delicious. It's like one sip and smell. And you know, when the beer is phenomenal and you just know immediately. But I also, on my trip, I also did the tour at Sam Adams, which was a lot more fun than I expected. And I only did the $10 tour. And after how good it was, I had wished I had done the higher tier one because it was so much fun. But I got this really cool Love Conquers ale glass. So it's super pretty. And, you know, it's Sam Adams. Even the big breweries, you know, they're really fun to do the tours. Sometimes they're the best tours. So that's what I'm drinking. And
Sam Adams is it's fantastic. Brewery tour. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend.
Yeah. And Tewksbury was gorgeous. For anybody who's not been or heard, that's the one that's on the golf course. So we literally, they max you at 3 beers, which is probably good because all their beers are high ABV. So I was definitely feeling it after 3 beers, even though I ate their pizza too. But you sit there and you're watching people play golf and it's absolutely gorgeous with just flowers everywhere. And they got a fountain going in the inside and the outside.
Too, because the owner flies
how do you think we got there
all the time.
That's how we got there.
I'm also disappointed you didn't go to Perfecto's Cafe right next door and got a killer breakfast sandwich. You should have done that. But, you know, what do I know?
We had to go pick up Erica and Ski, and then we went to the brewery you told us to go to.
Excuses. Well, we have 2 great guests. We're going to be talking about a fantastic new comic book app that everybody should be checking out. Welcome to the show. First time, Kenny and Travis. Kenny, we'll start with you. How's it going? And I know you have a beverage. What are you drinking? And introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Kenny Myers. I'm the engineer team essentially at Omnibus. And right now I'm drinking, I'll show it up there on the camera, the Sea Pine IPA. Sea Pine's a nice local brewery up here in Seattle. And their descriptions isn't quite as large as yours. It just says light-bodied West Coast IPA, citrus flavors and aroma. We're a simple folk up here with our descriptions. But, you know, it was hard to stay a little quiet when you said something to someone who lives on the West Coast about the best brewery being on the East Coast, let alone that amazing Sam Adams cup that I just was like, and I'm already jealous of. But I'm excited to be here, and I don't ever let Travis talk, so I'll just keep rambling. No, please, Travis.
Well, welcome, Travis. Now, of course, before the show, when you said you were from Seattle, New York, I thought you said you were in New York and you're Seattle. Well, you could have corrected me then. I had it backwards. Travis is like, dude, it's like 7:00 over here. I'm not, but welcome. Thank you for hanging out with us. Travis as well. Introduce yourself. Tell folks a little bit about you.
Hey, I'm Travis Schmeisser. I mostly focus on design and product stuff for Omnibus between the two of us. And I could not get somewhere that had beer that I like in time. So I am having an old fashioned can
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
from
Those are good.
a fancy liquor store that's pretty close to my office. And that's the only thing I can make it to. Sorry for breaking the theme.
Hey,
You're
I drink bourbons. I've drank everything. I do love a fine, good, mixed drink once in a while. It's okay. Like I said, we could drink coffee. We could drink water. It doesn't matter. Drink
Grown-ups.
what
We
you
can do whatever
enjoy.
we
We're
want.
grown-ups.
That's right.
We're adults with
Yeah.
money, and we could do whatever we want.
Yeah, mom. That's what I say.
I'm living alone is what I always say. What we like to start off on the show, though, is we can't get into the meat and potatoes of things without knowing your guys' geek origin story. How did you guys get involved in the comic book realm? And Travis, we'll still go ahead and start with you. How did you get encumbered into this world?
Riding bikes with my oldest friend, not too far from where we lived. There was just a little subdivision kind of shopping area, and there was a Suncoast Comics. It was the comic store in there, and we just kind of happened in, and then just started begging our moms to bring us there. Anytime we drove past it, basically, we were probably like 11, I think. And that was my shop for until I moved out of Bradenton, where I grew up in Florida there. So we just kind of went in, and I, coming from drawing and sort of an art background, like my mom was a kindergarten teacher, and that's kind of how I grew up, was like creating art and drawing and making things while she was kind of preparing lesson materials for her kids. So walking in there to me was like just like a visual extravaganza. Like it was just cool artwork and characters and stories. And I just kind of like lost my mind over it when I saw it. And then, just fast forward to now.
Right on. Now, do you have a favorite comic book of all time? Like, what was the first one you ever remember reading?
The first one was it might have been like the Jim Lee X-Men #1, or like Exo Manowar #1, something like that. I think not the foil cover Quesada one. I think it was the other one where he's kind of like standing like that, if I remember correctly. I think I still have it actually in these boxes here. Those are the two that stand out. I specifically remember, the X-Men one, because it had the multi-panel, and I had the poster that Jim Lee drew at the same time, where they're all hanging out around the pool. It was like in my room when I was younger. So that era like stands out a lot, and that's kind of just the like technical details of his illustration that kind of like really, really grab me.
Absolutely. Yeah. X-Men is just that one that a lot of people gravitate to. Because you have the killer artwork, you have so many different mutants and things. And especially as kids, before checking out comics, I always feel like there's a mutant that speaks to you, because as a kid, you're kind of looking for your place in life, kind of like the X-Men do as well in a lot of different ways. So really, really strong choice. And Jim Lee, man, you can just see his art from a mile away. It's his work as soon as you grab it. So solid choices. Kenny, how about you? How did you get into this realm?
In this realm, let's see. I was born and raised in beautiful San Diego, California. And we took a trip up to Seattle, and I forget how old I was, maybe like 8. And we went to Golden Age Collectibles, which is the comic book store. It's been around for forever. It's still around, which is a lot for a comic book store. Yeah. It's in Pike Place Market, and it is.
Oh, I saw that place. I was just there for Emerald City Comic Con, believe it or not, this past year.
Super great store. It's obviously like, like a lot of comic stores, it used to be just boxes of single issues.
Oh yeah,
it's how I remember it. But now there's a lot more collectibles and stuff, as they've had to diversify since the 90s. So I don't remember what 2 comics I bought, but I remember George and Sam, my buddies that we were meeting up here, we all picked out 2 comics, and I just really fell in love. And then when I got back home to San Diego, I found my comic store. And then it's really just like vaguely 3 things, which is, of course, X-Men #1. Travis and I are roughly the same age. The Death of Superman and Nightfall, like all in that like circle of just like the 90s the boom that destroyed comics for a while. That's what I decided to collect. I was like, this seems like a great time. But I've always never been so much a collector as one who really enjoys the stories. So that was really fun. And and Travis and I both big 90s X-Men fan. The animated series, obviously, I would wake up and watch. That's kind of it all blurs together when that was, but since then I've been a fan of comic books, and obviously like Spawn was really big because like, oh, this is dark and I'm about to be a teenager, like
rooting in my room.
yeah. I'm like, oh, there's murder. Oh, this is great. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got into comics. And then what Travis and I will tell you is that we kind of dipped out sometimes in our years. Sometimes dipped out for a little
actually.
bit. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I did that myself. I was reading as a kid, and then there was like my teenage years where, we just kind of, none of my friends were really into it, and we all were just more into sports and all that stuff. And then I didn't get back into it until Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Court of Owls is the first comic book I picked back up, which drew me back in. And since that, 2012, have just been immersed back into it. But there's nothing wrong with taking a break. It's sometimes you need to. There's just nothing wrong with it. I always tell people.
I think it was more like weird social pressure because comics used to be not as cool. Like now I can read. Now I feel like
made fun of
kids these days. No, now I feel like you could just read a comic. Like, I mean, that dog, the dog book, the cop dog or whatever is Dog Cop. I forget.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I think.
I hope this doesn't come back to haunt me in some ways when I'm talking to a publisher. Yeah. He's like, my kids are like, they're all into comics right now, and it's very, very cool.
Something like really heartwarming too, when like you're into it. Obviously, that's what we live and breathe, and then to see the kids kind of take those interests. Of course, like I was telling you guys before the show, my kid saw me reading Something Is Killing the Children and started to take an interest in that, and I was like, no. But my oldest is definitely, his favorite is Miles Morales, so it's always fun seeing different generations and what they get into, because I feel like a lot of time people feel pressure to be like, where do I start? I don't even know where to begin. There's so many stories.
It is overwhelming. As someone who got into it as an adult, it's very overwhelming at first.
Just pick up a comic book and start wherever, man. You can start with anything, and you can work your way forwards. You can work your way backwards. It truly doesn't matter.
Right. And before we get too much into the app that we're here to talk about, the Omnibus app, like that is a great way for somebody who does feel overwhelmed going into a comic book shop, which you should do both though, because if you ask them, they will answer any questions you have. But like, I really kind of started at the library. I went to Barnes and Noble in the library because I didn't feel comfortable. Like the first time I went into a comic book shop, I felt very uncomfortable. Yeah. Now I walk in and they're like, hey, Lauren, how are you? Here's your books. So it is a bit of a shift, but I do think there was that period, it was right before, a little bit right when all the comic book movies started taking off and catering to adults. Because even as a kid, the Batman movies catered to kids. And so now now we're getting Deadpool that's rated R and Logan that's rated R. So now it's more acceptable. So I love, though, that people are picking the hobbies back up. And here's a question we like to ask everybody that comes on. This is a very important, very serious question. Some people find it easy. Some people find it very difficult. If you had to choose Marvel or DC?
I can answer that pretty easy. I'm Marvel. Pretty much through and
you
through.
had the Flash shirt
I was hoping,
on, so
you
I
said
was like,
Flash.
ooh.
I was like, oh my gosh, to say DC.
I mean, like I have a lot of feelings about them obviously at different points in my life. But for me, it's hard to get rid of that nostalgia at some point, and I think that plays a big part of it. I did spend so much time with the X-Men. one of my favorite artists was Joe Mad, and I used to sketch his art and stuff as a kid. So there's so much associated with it. But I mean, I love DC. I think they're consistently putting out interesting books. It's picking your favorite children. Like you, the Batman run, I read that all the way through with Scott Snyder. And I just think their experimental stuff, or when they're like, here, Tom King, do 12 issues on someone. Those usually are my favorite books, in the superhero kind of genre. So it's really tough. But I mean, Wolverine. Yes. And I know tons of people who choose Batman for the right reasons.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
And Kenny has won the podcast. Sorry.
I think I'd have to select Marvel too. I mean, Batman is kind of my spirit animal.
There we go.
I've got the little things on my desk, but yeah, I think like the sheer number of like titles that I've probably really stuck with over the years and have resonated with me, and just some of the runs.
So
That's a painful question for comic retailers.
I know that's why I like
that. Hurt a little.
Well,
it stung us a little.
We like to add another one. Is do you have like an indie or not? I don't want to say indie because like,
what's your favorite image? Non-Marvel or DC property? You could say publisher or a specific comic. I know we're like what do you call it? Diane Sawyer. We really ask the hard-hitting questions.
While Travis is thinking, I actually have a question for you, Lauren. Like, okay. What was that comic? What were the comics that brought you in? Because my partner, like, they weren't into comics until I was like, hey, read Saga,
Saga, yes.
You know, and some of my buddies, like, I just send them all these new issues, and they pretty much started in 2012, 2013. And I'm curious what yours were.
So my origin story is basically Hugh Jackman. We would walk out of the X-Men movies and I had a friend that would be telling me, well, in the comics, this happened, and in the comics, that happened. And I just wanted to know more about his origin story. But I didn't know where to start at the time. So I literally went to Barnes & Noble and got like X-Men, like the first like 20 to 30 issues, like in the trade backs. And then I did that with the Avengers as well. And then my brother-in-law still had like a huge comic book thing. And I raided his closet well over a decade ago. And that's when I finally read, Hulk issue 180 to 181. And I took every single thing that had Wolverine in it. And that's really just how I got into it. And then when The Walking Dead came out, that's when I got into, there's comics that aren't Marvel or DC, and started reading that. And then of course I've read I've read a few Robert Kirkman since then, Invincible. And then when we started this podcast, Matt's like, okay, you're reading DC. I'm sending you The Dark Knight. I'm sending you Flashpoint. And I read both of those. And, now we're having, all these independent comic book writers come on the podcast and these Kickstarters. And I'm just floored at all these amazing stories that aren't just Wolverine, but Wolverine has a special place. My kid's name's Logan. So he has a special place in my heart. And he opened up a world to me that I didn't know existed. Nobody handed me a comic as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't hand it to my brother or me. I just wasn't exposed to it. So it's been fun. And now I can't wait to see Hugh Jackman in the yellow jumpsuit.
Yes.
I have
lose my mind.
I have so many thoughts about modern Wolverine that I just want to go into, but let's focus on,
No, you're good.
Yeah, we're getting off the hook. We can't get off the hook.
I know.
Yeah. You are letting off the hook. Sorry, that was nice.
This is just like,
I was curious.
I feel like, I could definitely name a couple that just like really stick out that like grabbed me in a lot of ways. Like, I think one of the biggest ones, if we were saying like non-big two, I think Tokyo Ghost was one that I've read. It's like a mini series, but I've read that like 10 times or something. That I love Sean Murphy, and anything post-apocalyptic. I'm a big Walking Dead fan too. I mean, anything where the world has ended, I will will read it and watch it. I love seeing like what happens when things go wrong. And probably along the same lines, I'm a like really big Sean Murphy fan. Is The Wake for the same reason.
I've heard of
the artwork, technical details, post-apocalyptic in a different way. But Tokyo Ghost in particular, I thought really grabbed me when it came out. Because it was like early social media days, and it was kind of like exactly what has happened, where it was like everything that can kind of go wrong. Everyone kind of does the mods, but they're like one of the main characters always has the screens in front of his face, where it's like everyone's kind of like addicted to being connected, and just what happens to the world, like the story and all the characters in it, and particularly the two main characters. I don't want to like say too much and give things away if somebody hasn't read it, but that one, like I've read it so many times. Just there's something like very magical about it to me, and I'm just such a fan of his. That's probably one that like stands out. That I'm just like I've probably reread that the most out of like any book I think ever.
I'm with you. I like a lot of like the post-apocalyptic. For some reason I gravitate to that. I don't know if it's maybe nowadays I'm just trying to get ready for what's to come in like 10 years, but those are kind of the stories that I find myself definitely going to as well.
They're almost hard to avoid these days. In some regards.
True.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, the futuristic stuff used to look bright and like shiny, and now it's everything
Yeah. No, it's just depressing.
depressing looking. It's like, oh wow, what happened?
It's all gone wrong.
It is very interesting to see how many different portrayals of a dystopian future people have created. So it is always fun to see even zombie stories like with The Last of Us, like what a unique spin on the zombie world. So it's really, fun to see all these different ideas. And one of them's got to be right.
Definitely got looking dismal, but yeah.
All right, Kenny, you're up.
I think Invincible is the greatest superhero book ever written.
I agree.
I've read a lot of them, and it's a completed story, which is helping it quite a bit along the way. But the way that character evolved over time, how certain situations didn't turn out how I expected. And it was designed, I remember him saying, to make fun of genre tropes in a lot of ways and flip them. But it just seems so masterfully put together. And one of the things that's working at obviously building Omnibus and finding all these publishers we really like is we get exposed to a lot more that we wouldn't normally. So I've been really impressed with the work. I remember seeing it at New York City Comic-Con for the first time, seeing Vault's work. I feel like their output is pretty high as a publisher, and I'm pretty inspired by a lot of the people they bring in, as well as this company in San Francisco called Silver Sprocket, which is more indie fantagraphics drawn in quarterly, if you've heard of them. And they're doing unique, sometimes just absolutely ridiculous, hilarious comic books in different formats. And I'm a huge fan of their work and really inspired to obviously sell a lot of their books because they're not only on our app, but they're just really good. So, right. But I would say Invincible is probably my favorite. I think it's number one, which is hard because there's Age of Apocalypse, that whole thing from the X-Men. I don't know. I've heard it holds up well, but is definitely up there.
It still does, but we're talking non-big two.
Non-big two, I know. But
that does. I did reread that not too long ago, and that does hold up. I particularly love.
They kill everyone in it. That's why. That's their thing.
I love Invincible's probably. Yeah, Invincible. That would be my number one favorite non-Marvel or DC. 100%. It's cool. Robert Kirkman. Also, he does a great. He likes happy endings.
Yes, he does.
So, and I'm
There's
also
a little.
Me too.
If you look in just over Kenny's right shoulder.
Oh, is Alan
has
there?
The Alan.
Yeah.
We
just had a conversation about these characters. and Travis just gifted me Alan, who's one of my favorite characters in comic books for a lot of reasons.
Is he the little orange one? Is that one you just
Alan the alien.
Shoulder? Okay.
Yeah. And actually, nice. the Invincible compendiums are right down there too. They need to be filed away. But yeah, no, I could do
I ordered
podcasts.
The Mark toy for myself. But yeah, late just last week, actually, I was on Amazon or something, and oddly, that came up. I was like, I didn't even know they made these toys.
Yeah, my comic shop's got them.
So yes.
I laughed when I saw Seth Rogen voicing him in the cartoon. I was like, huh, that's a good choice, I suppose.
He's been
funny.
everywhere too. Seth Rogen's
been
kind of everywhere lately, especially in the comic book realm. Ever since he broke out of that, I guess you can say, typecast of the stoner role from Pineapple Express and stuff to now. He did Preacher. He was involved in that, and Invincible. He's involved in that. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. He's been involved with that.
He's involved in The Boys too, isn't he?
Yeah,
they write it, I believe.
Yeah. And so he's been very quietly, really doing some good work within the comic book genre of.
Totally agree. His output's been awesome. We could literally, again, spend so much time talking about anything but the app in regards to comics.
We have to come back for another episode.
And we're curious, I'm curious, what does someone who's starting new in comics in the last, 10 years, what do they these are questions that I just find fascinating because we love comics and we love the culture around it too.
With Invincible, the guy that ran my comic book shop, I was reading Walking Dead. Walking Dead was still active at the time. And he's like, you have to read this comic. And he's like, you have to get through the first trade back because he wanted me to get that first shocking reveal.
First kick.
And he's like, it's a little bit slow the first, and as soon as you get through, it takes off. And this was years before the cartoon came out.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the cartoon, like, I think it's good, but I felt like they ruined that first reveal a little too soon. So I feel like people aren't loving the show as much as the book is great.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do with season 2.
I'm worried that I'm just digging the time there, because I could talk about all the great things, all the plotting he did, how people show up like 20 issues before they're actually put in play. I love it so much. I think it's a brilliant piece of work.
Yeah. And it just shocked me and shocked me and shocked me.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I read all, like, by the time I got all of them, like, you know, we're all about go to local comic book shop. We like the paper in our hand, but that's not always feasible. And you can't always get the comics in your hands, and you can't always carry a compendium phone book around. So let's get into the app. And why don't you guys tell us about how you decided to start this app?
I'll talk about it. So Kenny and I, so we've known each other for over a decade, and we, from web design agencies we used to work at, and met up at conferences and would kind of see each other if we were in each other's town, but we kind of kept in touch over comics by texting back recommendations, because I only have a couple other friends that have maintained reading throughout the years. So we would just kind of trade, like, what are you reading? Send me new books, and try to help each other find kind of like things that the other one hadn't read. So that goes on for years. And basically we had decided to leave our jobs and start working on a company together. And we had kicked around a bunch of ideas, and we were going to build B2B SaaS software, just like small business software to help them run their business, do different things. We had a couple ideas. So we'd actually left and started to do that. And every time we kind of hopped on a call and would talk about it, we just were complaining about kind of the Comixology switchover. And so this was probably only a couple months after that had happened. So it was really fresh. Mm-hmm. I guess an important thing is that when we got back into comics, like we said, so post college, kind of when we started up again, years later, it was because of Comixology. We actually started reading fully digital again. So Kenny's got, tons of books, as you can see behind him, and I have some, but I read even more digital than he does. But that was kind of how we kept up with everything. Mm-hmm. So it was very top of mind for us, and we just kind of kept complaining about that, and we were just really bummed about what happened. And then on top of it, we kind of just saw and thought and still think that there was sort of a missed opportunity for what digital could do to introduce more people into comics, help you find your way there if you don't have a local store, or just be like even a companion to having that local experience or going in and buying. Because some people, it's not that it's one or the other. Like, some people buy a little bit of both. Some people mm-hmm. prefer only digital. Some people don't care anything about digital, right? Like, I just happen to be the type of customer that prefers, like, I even read most of my books on my Paperwhite Kindle. There's just a lot of customer preference, we think, with that. And we just want to help people find new books to read. And if you prefer to read digitally, we want to make the best way to find and read new books, kind of. And that was like what we saw as the problem. And then just as everything was happening with them, we were like, I think there's a chance that we could maybe build something to help fit in that space and help people find new books and kind of enjoy reading again. And that was like sort of it was just birthed out of like, we wanted it, mm-hmm. like we wanted somewhere to read and enjoy and not be bummed out when we opened it. And we both come from technology backgrounds, like at agencies, big and small startups. And so we know how to make these things. And we were just like, I think we could do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I've had my comic book shop. It's very rare that they can't just order something, but there has been times where like this one's just too hard to get, or, the movie's coming out or something, and they've sent me to Cosmicology. So have you been talking to comic book shops and being like, hey, can you send your people here when you can't, do you have that collaboration with comic book shops? Because I do think this is something that can be, I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of world, kind of like craft beer.
You want to?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we view that too. Like, we very much think of local comic stores as like gathering places, for people to talk shops. So we have talked to to owners of, I mean, obviously it's not like like we can't just send out a group email to everyone. But we have talked with publishers and we have talked with comic book store owners about where digital makes sense in terms of like redemption codes or things like that we find, really compelling. Or yeah, I mean, we already, one of our publishers already has a link to like a store finder on the app on their page. Like we are very comfortable with that relationship, and we think that like LCSs are so foundational to just like the industry growing, and we want to grow the industry too. So yeah, it's a lot of stores to talk to, and it's usually via the publisher who we build our relationships with. But our goal is to enable exactly the kind of like discussion you're talking about. We're just like, I can't get this, and like, oh, it's on here, they're really good, And we've talked about ideas that obviously with like affiliate programs and stuff like that that are kind of out of like our view as we're building a lot of stuff right now, but are definitely things that we've discussed and we really hope might potentially help the stores grow and vice versa.
Well, I think
Yeah,
it's
I know.
interesting. We all sorry. No, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in talking to some customers, we've noticed like not only is there a preference of just like maybe I like digital, maybe I prefer print, which I think is like inherent. Like I said, even I read novels and other books just on Kindle. Is we've had a few people tell us that they pick up single issues digitally, but volumes or omnibuses like bigger ones because they want the beautiful object or the whole collection, right? So there's like, I don't know, Kenny and I just see it as this like customer preference thing, and we're not in like competition or anything. There's just like there's some people that want to buy certain things. I mean, I rebuy books in print that I like really love, right. Design, art, and comics, right? Like I, even as like digital as I am, is like if there's something very special like that, like I would buy it physically. So we just don't see it as like a competitive thing. It's just like there's customer preference for certain things, and like that's fine, And it's interesting because it seems like books are the ground, they've held the most ground. Like there are still like vinyl enthusiasts, right? But like there's not as many like CD enthusiasts. I don't know. I would guess like from architecture, but books, like you said, Lauren, like people want to hold it, right? And I have tons of friends and people I know that like refuse to read digitally because they want that, and that's fine. There's some people that don't care and want to read it, and like that's kind of how we feel. We're like, I mean, if you're into it, we're here to help you.
I think a lot of what like the digital too, like what you guys are doing is people don't realize, like, for example, my closest comic book shop's 45 minutes away, and there's some people that have longer commutes to go. So something like what your app can do is somebody can be at home on their Wi-Fi and they can get into the comics, like you said here. And then if they want to go out and buy the actual issues, they can, because it's kind of like that. As long as you discover comic books, who cares? Because at the end of the day, you're reading really good stories, and you guys have some really good comic books, through your app. There's a lot of, and it just doesn't matter how it gets there, as long as it's reaching them somehow. And then from there, they can choose to Amazon it or whatever it may be from there. But as that kind of gateway for people who don't necessarily have a comic book shop readily available.
Living in Orlando, I didn't even think of that. We like, that's a great point. Cause you're not going to get a single issue at a big, chain bookstore or Walmart or Target or something. So, yeah.
Like if you're middle of America, like middle of nowhere, Kansas or something, you could have to drive an hour, and you can't necessarily always do that. But say there's something from Boom coming out that you've heard of, or it's becoming a Netflix series and you want to check it out. Well, Boom, they can pull up their, and they can pull up their thing.
Hey, like a dad joke right there.
Yes. They can go ahead and just pick up their iPad, and there you go.
Yeah, I feel like I had a so let them eat cake moment there.
Yeah, I mean, when I moved to Jacksonville from South Florida when I went to college, and that was one of the reasons I fell off, is I didn't have anybody that was still reading with me, and there was no comic book shop anywhere near where I lived on campus. I didn't have a car. Jacksonville's a very, very big city.
Nobody liked them.
And plus nobody.
Yeah.
So like it was one of those reasons that I did fall off. It wasn't accessible.
Yeah. And now it's you can, and right now I know it's through an iPad, but you guys are working to get it to other mediums. What other mediums and platforms are you guys hoping to have, say, within the next year or so?
Everywhere.
Yeah, we'll be
World.
We are in the world, but on iPad only.
in much less than a year.
Yeah. Our goal is to. We've started work on iPhone because that's like the easiest jump from because it's like the same
It's similar software. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the same tools. We've started. We have a web reader. We have a bunch of stuff that's really in the pipeline that we think will be up pretty quickly. We're not talking deadlines, obviously, because it's software. It's messy.
Yeah.
And we want to demess it as much as possible before we release it. But I mean, we're going to be pretty multi-platform pretty soon. And our goal is we're aggressively moving towards that is, I think, the best way I could say it. Like, that is our focus. So we're excited for a lot of reasons. Obviously, like, iPad's a beautiful device. It's a great device for reading comics. Like, we kind of consider that as far as digital goes. Like the nicest way. It's as portable as a comic can be. You could, buy a comic while hanging out with your friends, like those ridiculous Nintendo Switch ads. I don't know if you ever remember those. Where they're like on the rooftop, like I was just like, just buying a comic, having cool time with my friends. Yeah, but it's really important to us to get comics everywhere to everyone around the world, which is, of course, insane, but so fun. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a good thing about being digital anyways, is most people now, it's not everybody, but most people have either an iPhone or an iPad, and around the world, we're more connected now than we ever were in the 90s when you have to go to the comic book shop. And now it's so much easier. So when you're looking through the app store, like, I need something before my plane ride or things like that. I forgot my comics. Like, I sometimes have to bring my comics in my backpack if I'm flying, and I don't want to do that because I want to ruin them. So then, boom, I can just pick up my kid's iPad or my iPad and be like, I got the app right here. I'm in the airport. I can roll in there.
Right. Then you don't have to get a book in the gift shop.
Yeah,
like, let's read this book about, I don't Although apparently that's how we got the Hamilton musical. He was in the airport and bought a book about Hamilton.
God bless you. Bookstore, airport bookshop.
Personal raise.
But that doesn't always happen. Yeah. No, absolutely. When I'm packing my bag for the plane, those comic books, like, you read them quick and they're thick. My favorite thing about the digital comic books, though, is the sliding from each section, because, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming on a page. You're like, wait, okay, this next. So how does that work in the most layman terms you can explain? Like, do you have to go through each comic book and figure, okay, this is where it's going to slide over? Like, that's got to be a bit of a tedious process.
You want us to give you the tour of the chocolate factory, essentially, with the Oompa Loompas?
As long as I don't turn into like a blueberry or chocolate.
You just
but talk to us like we're the children, not the adults.
It's funny that came back because when you were talking about the Sam Adams city, I was like thinking to myself, that sounds like a Willy Wonka ingredient, like Tewksbury. And then it moved on, and I didn't get to make my joke, but it came back. It came back. It all came full circle.
The answer is very simple and elegant. Publishers give us PDFs, like high resolution, like really high quality, like just PDFs, and we take those pages and we go through each one and we turn them into JPEGs using software. So just like on the web, and then we order them, and the swiping is mostly like Apple. A lot of platforms have done the work so that it's really not. It's like literally a small line.
So it's outlined for you.
Easy.
Yeah, it's pretty much. It's easy to do those kind of touch interactions. And so like that. It really is. It's very basic to get that part going. The logistics of getting that information and getting all that stuff from publishers is its own thing. But but the actual, once we got them, the conversion and stuff, we've had that going for a while, and we're always tweaking things. We really do want to be the fastest digital platform with like the best looking comics. And, that's not only just collaboration between publishers on getting the right sort of like PDF file or even like deeper data, like, down. I know like some people send InDesign, which is like full weird Adobe things. Now I'm getting in the weeds, Travis. You're supposed to stop me from getting into the weeds. I'm just gonna like name dropping programs and stuff. Just be like, Kenny, quiet.
I'll say too, like Kenny's simplifying a lot of work that he has done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like hard work and a lot. There actually is. It's kind of funny. Like there's an app behind the app that nobody sees. That is what Kenny's talking about. That people drop PDFs in a certain app or on a server like via FTP, and our system sucks it in and matches it with metadata from other data sources or like a spreadsheet. We have a whole like backend that sucks all these things in, kind of then ends up in like a CMS that basically kind of like runs our app that feeds all this stuff. But there are all these logistics of like the PDF rendering. One of the things Kenny's been working on in the last like couple of weeks is like we actually have like 3 fallback systems for if a PDF can't be read by certain programs, because there's one that we use that's like the best rendering, and sometimes it can't read things. So we have these fallbacks, and then we have to debug sort of like the quality and the output that comes from them. And then, computers aren't perfect, so sometimes they fall down. So we have processes and tools to kind of like reprocess them and check that things have failed and then fix them. And some of those are like command line tools. Some of them are, point and click kind of tools.
Right.
So there's actually like a pretty crazy system behind everything that no one will ever see besides us.
Right.
It's a lot of hard work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And then we
looks
have to
like the breakfast machine from Back to the Future in the beginning of Back to the Future. It literally like they give us the PDF and then it goes through this whole thing.
Wow, I'm thinking of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That one in my head, but that wouldn't.
We'll also accept that as an answer.
I was like, that one's going to be crazier. That's not going to end
Goldberg.
Yeah.
Now the app. It's not subscription based. It's like, hey, if you want to, as long as you have an Apple ID, you can get in. And then if you want to buy each comic, that's just kind of how it works out, right?
Yeah, it's a la carte. It's just like a local comic book store. You buy per book.
That's even more, convenient, because then people I know sometimes get turned away from like, oh, I'm already paying X amount of dollars for the streaming service. Now here's another thing. But this is kind of like, hey, you have an Apple ID, come on in and you can pick your own. It's a comic book shop just on handheld, which is really nice.
Yeah, I downloaded on my daughter's iPad because I don't have an iPad. So, but yeah, we were scrolling through it. So yeah, it's just the in-app purchases. And I will say, like, there's sometimes we'll have a guest come on here and I can't get the comic book quick enough. So I'll download it on Amazon. And so many times I'm zooming in to read something that's little and it's blurry. So I like that you guys are focusing on that quality. I am old.
Your poor eyes.
Even with my reading glasses.
You're in good company.
Since I was in my early 20s. All right.
Same.
my readers.
Glasses over here. So
yeah,
you have to wear yours all day. I only have
four eyes. What are you doing? What are you talking about?
See anything? God. Well, that is a good problem though. I know what you're saying, because whenever I do, sometimes I digital. That's kind of what turned me off originally, is because some of these apps, you go to like blow up the image and it gets kind of blurry. Whereas you guys, you seem to have a really streamlined, crystal clear process. Like I didn't have that issue when I was playing around on my son's iPad at all. I
mean, that's really nice to hear. We're constantly working on it. Like it's like my little baby project. It's really like, I mean, obviously Travis is the designer, so it goes through him. Like I have to be like, does this look good enough? And then he's like, no. And I'm like,
more.
Yeah. I have a logistical question. How do you drink very hobby IPAs, interview people, and then hold in burps as well as you can? Is there a system you've all developed
for 3 years? I guess my body's just trained at this point.
No, it's called the mute button.
I was gonna say mute.
I have just like I haven't done it like anything like this with a beer other than with friends gaming.
It's like Oz, okay? You're not supposed to go behind the curtain.
Oh, sorry.
Whatever, you went behind our curtains, we're going behind yours.
That's right. Yes. I'll hit the mute button because I'll either be yelling at the kids or I'll be burping.
And I'm finding it challenging, but also fun, like a little mini game within the podcast.
There you go. Exactly. I like that Matt was trying to keep us classy. We don't burp.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but
I did see Matt mute a couple times. I'm not saying that's what he was doing.
Hey, everyone does it.
It happens.
Yeah.
Most of the time the muting is yelling at children, 100%.
Because my wife doesn't get home in time, so it's like the kids, at the doors. Dad, can I have a snack? And it's like, you just
Oh
had
my
dinner.
God.
Like, what do you
We
mean?
want everything. My daughter, my 11-year-old, will be like, "Are you on? Are you recording? Are you doing that?"
No.
But so let's go back to the content on the app. So because I saw I looked up some of my favorites. Like I saw Noctera on there, and so how many publishers do you have on there? So if somebody's looking for something specific, like how do they go about doing that? Like who all's on there as of right now? You don't have to name everybody.
I think we have 15. I want to say
15 or 16. Yeah, we're announcing another one more soon that we're finishing up some changes for. We've really focused on, like, Kenny and I wanted to do kind of like a top down, like all of our favorite publishers we think making the best books right now is kind of who we've focused on, because we wanted to be like a replacement for people trying to find somewhere to read the kind of books they know about. We eventually want to have all comics, but we think that's like the best place to start and what the most people are looking for a replacement for, kind of, and that's like what we've come to learn to tackle, like the customer needs first and foremost, I guess, kind of like making product over time, and that's kind of where we started. But oh God, I should have this. I need to learn it like alphabetized, like the state list. But
I mean, I know it alphabetized. So go ahead, Travis. You go first, though.
Well, if you know it, go ahead.
No, I lied. You caught me.
It's a DUI test.
Ablaze is one. We have
Blaze, Ahoy, Black Panel. Hold on, I'm actually trying to go through alphabetically.
I'm looking at it right now, so no, you're spot on so far.
CEX, Dark Horse, Humanoid.
Oh, you skipped a big one, buddy.
I
know. Boom.
Doing some of the best comics.
You're doing pretty good, though. I'm actually. We actually stare at the icons of them all the time. So
I'm actually really impressed. Yeah, keep going.
Image, Mad Cave. One, I can't tell you. Scout. I'm looking at a list in our admin.
I was I could tell when you started reading.
Titan Comics.
This guy sucks. Get him off the podcast.
He went from looking up to staring at a screen. It wasn't even subtle.
Secrets 1 through 5 that I can't talk about.
So when you get a publisher, do you get all of the works that they've published, or just newer ones, or is it on a case by case basis?
It depends on the publisher. Like smaller publishers, generally they'll just give us their whole catalog. Like you have someone like a Silver Sprocket. I mean, Black Panel is probably the smallest publisher we have. I think they're at like 14 books. Really cool indie publisher from Canada. We just really liked it. He had a lot of them nonfiction, very different. Check them out if you're on the app. Like some really good books. Yeah. And then, Image obviously has like 12,000 books. So there's a process of just like loading in. And we are also the new, like, really, they haven't had to load on a comic book store, in a decade. For like, they've just had Comixology for the longest time. There have been others coming and going, but so their processes, like we've had to work with them, and we're filling out back catalog and stuff like that slowly over time. So it becomes like, what can you give us as soon as possible? And then it becomes like, well, let's like load in by like what we know, like obviously what sells, which they have that data, which we do not, because that's important too. We're still a store. We still need to make money.
For sure.
And then stuff that we love, like there's definitely books where we've just been like, let's get this on, even though it's like, it's not one of our biggest sellers. They're like, well, we don't care. We love this book. We'll try to make it a big seller. But yeah,
we're comic store owners. We gotta try to push what we think
put what you love out there too, because you never know, you might find that one or two people, and then it just goes from there. Word of mouth.
I hope so. That's the dream.
Yeah, I mean, cult followings get popular years later.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that which comics books sell and which don't. Is that an issue though with like keeping up space on whatever server you have? I am not educated at all in app work, just so you know.
No, it's no problem.
Is that an impact? Like, would you be able to like be like, hey, Kickstarter comic, come over here and sell your comics, or is it not worth it cost wise for you to have that comic?
Actually, I mean, the biggest hurdle right now, and they have been very. And I speak of them with all the holiness they wish to be regarded with, Apple, allows us only to have a certain number of things for sale in their store, and they've been really gracious about like what that limit is and how we work around it and stuff like that. That's kind of the biggest holdup, is just making sure things, because we have to sell on iPad, we have to register with Apple essentially each comic book. And so they've been really generous with their time on like reviewing stuff like that. And I don't think we're anything special to them, but we're definitely putting out more of those comic like items for sale than they do. But as far as like server space is concerned, not really. That's part of the advantage of being a digital comic book store, right? Is that, it's its own burden for the
Sure.
discovery reason, but we're able to have a lot of things, and we don't have warehouse space or shelf space in that regard. That being said, we do have a store to sell things, and Travis and I have been thinking a lot about what that means for us as comic book owners, and he can probably speak to that a little better.
Yeah, there's almost like, besides the technical side, like a logistical, like as we ingest things into the system, we have to make sure like the PDFs render properly, like did all the metadata come through? Is it activated properly? There's just kind of like, is the computer doing its job in the background, and is everything connecting properly? And we have a lot of automated systems that do that and ways to check up on it, because we knew since we were tiny, we needed to let like robots do as much as they could, kind of essentially. But yeah, like Kenny said, I think especially with back catalog stuff, and because we're just getting off the ground, we'd love for everybody to think of that old book, search for it and find it. And that's why we're filling out the back catalog. But logistically, it's interesting, while having like infinite storage and shelf space, like you said, Lauren, like we still have like limited shelf space in the sense that we have a store section with only so much stuff, and you can keep scrolling, right? But like the further down you go, like not as many people are going to make it down there or pay attention. So we're paying a lot of attention to what we can do with that space, sort of, and like what we want to promote, and like how much of that do we do with new stuff and titles that you may already know, with a mix of like back catalog things that you may not know about and that we think people would get into. So that's like, yeah, that's a lot of like what Kenny and I try to talk about, figure out how to highlight, much like a local store does, really, like any retail or merchandiser has to.
So my last app specific question is, my husband and his brother actually run a software company, and they have an app. So I know the hours that go into this. So from the start of this to the launch date, how long did that take you? And how long ago did you guys launch?
I don't know the exact date. I can't remember, but we basically started close to a year ago. The switchover, like we said, we were already working on something else. So the date that we actually switched, it was like late summer. So it's been about a year. We launched
May 12th.
Yeah. So about 3 months ago.
Nice.
We're still a baby. Still a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still very new.
Walking. So there
and you already got Image Comics and stuff on there. That's awesome.
Thank
you. You guys are killing it. So.
Yeah, we were.
You look like there was something you wanted to say that you were holding back.
Don't you use your interview skills on me? No, I like that is. We had a lot of discussions in the very beginning about like who could we get that like we would be okay with, like not okay with, like extremely excited about. Like if we could get these publishers, we feel like we have a shot at doing this. And it just ended up being, the response has been so positive and overwhelming that it's just like all the publishers we've gotten, we're super grateful for. And it was beyond what we thought year one, like especially our launch and like the first few months would be. So in many ways, it feels like a little ridiculous in my head. I'm like, that happened, because I'm just like, that's crazy. And on the other hand, it's just so, I tell people this a lot, but like my 12-year-old self would just lose his fucking mind.
Yeah.
Like would just
we
go
hear
crazy.
that often on this podcast, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like we were talking about what got you into comics, and Kenny raved about his store, and like Suncoast, like I said, mine, like Justin, the guy that ran that shop, I thought was the coolest person in the entire universe. When I was younger, it was just like you went in, you're like, this is your job. Like you hang out in here and you talk to me about comics and tell me what I should read. And so there's an element of that you geek out about. But yeah, you mentioned Image, and like they actually were the first one that we had an official call with when we really kicked off trying to talk to publishers and like see if we could do this, and like, can we get far enough with what we have to build and those relationships to like make this actually happen. So that's why Kenny kind of made that face, is like, that was like a really, to us, like a big moment when we even had that call, let alone, where we ended up, and we have Image books. But I mean, it was funny. Like I was actually on vacation. I was in Thailand. So I was on a crazy time difference, and I couldn't make that one because I had a really late dinner, and the call was at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. or something, the time I was. So Kenny just took the initial call. And I remember I like woke up and like the sun wasn't even up to like hear from Kenny, like how, and like, I remember I walked downstairs and I'll wake my girlfriend up and like sat by this pool as like the sun came up, and like Kenny like told me what happened, and that was like, so anyway, that's like part of the face he's making was like, that was like I don't know. It was like kind of a big moment for us. It was really like it like meant a lot.
That's awesome. It's always amazing when like an idea happens and then it happens better than you expect it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot to do. Like we have so much
it's
to
an
do.
Intimidating list.
Well, and with any kind of technology, you're never done. Like it's just constant.
I mean, we have stuff we want in our comic store that are beyond what you could get from a local comic store, things that are, we think are interesting and appealing. And we have a lot to do, let alone to be, on multiple platforms for multiple people in different parts of the world. So it's really exciting, but we have a lot to do, but we're, grateful that some publishers we tricked them into saying yes.
Have given us the time of day.
He's George Burnsing it up over there. Well, we definitely want to stay in contact with you guys because we want to see you grow and obviously recommend you as well.
Yeah, this is an app that we fully support. Any way we get comic books out there, and I mean, you guys have come such a far way in such a short amount of time that it's exciting to get to watch
from here.
And so we definitely love and appreciate what you guys are doing. As we do wrap up, where can people find you, and do you guys have any Comic-Con appearances that you're coming up at?
Omnibus.app is the main website. You can find a link to download us from there, or go to omnibus.app/download and it'll redirect. iPad only right now, soon to be different. Twitter, we're at the Omnibus app. The website I mentioned has our newsletter. That is the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing. We will both be at New York City Comic-Con. We'll have stickers and be buying beers and coffees or whatever anybody wants. If you come up and talk to us about comics. Kenny, so.
Yeah, we're pretty much on all social platforms. Again, the website's the best way to find those places. We do updates there as well. But yeah, we don't have a formal presence at any conventions. We have an informal presence that if you recognize us or see a sticker and be like Omnibus, I guarantee you our minds will just explode in place. So if you like seeing people's minds explode in person, then that's your chance.
Tenacious D. He's fine. Oh man, did not mean so. But yeah,
pretty much.
You guys rock. Seriously, would love to stay in touch. Continue to see how you guys, grow the things. Everybody, please go down get the app. I mean, you're already messing around your iPad anyways. This is how you're going to keep your little nephew from coming up at your party asking if you have any games on your iPad. Just be like, I got this for you. And let's
get something better
together.
Yeah,
exactly. Comic book, get them started young, if you will. Travis, Kenny, we really appreciate your time, first and foremost, and we can't wait to have you guys back on. We'll have to do this again soon and just chop it up over some good old fashioned comic book stories next time.
And some hoppy IPAs.
Yes.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having us. It does mean a lot to us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We will be talking to you guys soon. Everybody, the link to their site, their app is going to be in the bio of this episode. Make sure you check it out. And every Wednesday, you can find Lauren and I writing the latest in comic book reviews for your number one source of comic book news and reviews. It's nerdinitiative.com. So make sure to check that out. And then as always, find us, Hops Geek News. You know where to find us at. Until next time, everybody, cheers.